Hi and welcome to this new timeless video. In this video I'll talk about the cards from Modern Horizons 3 that I think will impact the format the most. So let's get on to it. So the first card that I want to talk about is Primal Prayers, which I think will be a very interesting card to combo with Satoru the Infiltrator and also Greenbelt Rampager. This combination allows you to bounce Rampager an infinite amount of times, to draw an infinite amount of cards with Satoru, and then win with Thassa's Oracle at instant speed. I think this deck should also play some elementals to have synergy with Satoru, and I think the best ones will probably be Endurance and Subtlety, since they are of the Simic colors. I think another very interesting combo that you can add to this deck is Guide of Souls plus, as their Rack, the Archlich, which essentially allows you to bounce the Lich an infinite amount of times and drain the opponent an infinite amount of times due to going to the dungeon, which is really good. The next card that I want to talk about is Unstable Amulet, which I think has great potential as a card advantage engine, but also as a finisher, since it does 1 damage every time you cast a spell from any place other than the hand. I think this card will fit right into Rakdos Bridge strategies, since you can use the card as an alternative win condition. It also fits very well in the Enhanced Surveillance decks, which use a combo of Dragon's Rage Channeler, Mishra's Bubble, and Enhanced Surveillance to essentially mill your whole deck and win with Thassa's Oracle. I think in this kind of shell you could win without Thassa's Oracle, just casting Bubble or looping Mox Amber a ton of times and just winning. So the next card in this list is Tamiyo, Inquisitive Student, which I think will be a staple in any blue-based tempo or even mid-range deck. I think Tamiyo is great because it provides a very good card advantage engine with the clues. It has a very decent body with the O3, and also in this format specifically it flips very easily with Brainstorm, Treasure Cruise, and even a combination of Mishra's Bubble and cracking a clue for the turn. I think the Planeswalker side is better than people think. It's not very flashy, but the +1 can protect herself, and the minus can provide you with a steady stream of card advantage. It's also worth noting that Tamiyo is a wizard for Flame of Anor, and is also a blue creature that you can sacrifice to Flare of Denial. And on the 7th position is Psychic Frog, which I think is an excellent creature which is being very underrated. This creature is insane for me. It's just a very good source of card advantage. It's very difficult to remove with common base red removal, since you can just discard cards to protect it. It also has evasion, which you can use to make sure it connects and provides you with card advantage every turn. And you can also sack it to Flare of Denial and Flare of Malice, which I think will be also staples in the Dimir decks that Psychic Frog wants to be played on. And the next card, Konian Nightmare. I think this is a great value engine, which you can use to, for example, sacrifice Stitcher Suppliers or Bloodgust and then get Grief again or Bowmasters, and you can do a lot of crazy stuff. I think it's a really good card, and I'm also very interested in trying it in the Rakdos Bridge shell, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, you can actually loop Stitcher Suppliers with Konian Nightmare and then cast them the Nightmare again with Dark Ritual, and I think it's an infinite combo because you get like 6 cards for each Stitcher Suppliers loop, and then you get the mana with Dark Ritual, and then you can just do the thing that you always do, which is fetch the Tendrils and just win. So I think Rakdos Bridge will get a big boost with this card, and since they will have another kind of win condition to get the Tendrils kill. And for the next card, Amped Raptor. I think this uncommon is probably the best just low to the ground value creature of the set. Amped Raptor provides you with almost always a 2/4 mana if you construct your deck correctly. So I think there will be 2 main builds. The first one will be a Lurus kind of build with just Amped Raptor and the rest of very 1 or 2 drops, which you can always cast with the energy that Amped Raptor provides. I think this kind of aggressive builds will be Boros based, with just very cheap creatures to overpower the opponent, and maybe also White of the Night Orchid with a land distraction sub-theme. I think the other kind of build that you can do, which is very aggressive, would be maybe a Rakdos or even Giant build with just good creatures such as Nethergoyf, Tarmogoyf, and very cheap spells such as Hand Disruption, Thoughtseize, etc., which you can always cast with raptor and be happy with it. And I think the next kind of build, which I find much more interesting, because I don't think it will be as good, but you have to do a little bit more of creative deck building, will be Izzet builds with raptor, in which you will essentially manipulate your library with probably Brainstorm and even Mishra's Bubble to set up a turn where you get, for example, 5 or 6 energy, and then you cast your Fury for free, or even your Ring for free, or some really high mana cost spells. And I think this can only be done in a blue-based shell, because then you have the best energy generator, which is Tune the Narrative, and also the library manipulation that Brainstorm provides. And for the next card, probably the most hype card in the set, that is Nadu. I think Nadu is an excellent creature. I think the key here is that the 2 triggers also apply to the other creatures, not only Nadu. I've also been theory crafting a Temur version, because that's my favorite chart. I'm always obsessed with trying to find the best builds for it. But I think it has some potential. The reason is you can play Fury, and with Fury you can actually ping your own creatures up to 4 and actually draw 4 cards or put lands into play. So I think the fact that you can chain Furies and keep drawing them and playing them for free, I think it has some potential, not as a combo engine, but I think as a value engine with other good creatures such as maybe Tarmogoyf for Uro, the Titan. So I think it could also be a very interesting path to go. And cracking the top 3, I think you will be a bit surprised of my choice for the 3rd best card coming from Modern Horizon 3 for Timeless, but I think this card is actually Buried Alive. The reason that I think Buried Alive will be so good in Timeless is that you can essentially put 3 Arclight Phoenix into play on turn 1 using Strike It Rich, Dark Ritual, and Buried Alive, and that's it. And then you have 3 Phoenix attacking for 9 on turn 1, and then you just kill them essentially on turn 2 if they just fetch a Shockland, or you just bolt them, or you just do essentially anything. So that's a turn 2 kill, which is quite insane and very, very hard to stop. There's also the fact that it's not like a combo deck in which you go all in and then you either win or don't win if they have counterspell or removal. Here, just have your Phoenixes. If they remove them, you can just get them again with any of your cantrips, like a normal Phoenix deck. So you can essentially just function as a typical aggro Phoenix deck. And if they remove your Phoenix, well, just keep resuscitating them and hitting them. So the fact that Buried Alive acts as a tutor and as a turn 1 way to put your Phoenixes into play, I think it's busted. There's also the fact that you don't have to do it on turn 1. I think the God Draw is with Strike It Rich, which I think is a reason enough to play it. The card is terrible in a vacuum, but I think the fact that you can turn 1 Buried Alive and actually revive your Phoenixes, I think it's worth it. But if you don't have Strike It Rich, you can just set up turn 1 with a cantrip, turn 2 a removal spell, Dark Ritual, Buried Alive. I think it will be still good. You're very dependent on Dark Ritual, but it's true that being Grixis also gives you some space to play Thoughtseize, so you'll be a bit less weak to other combo decks such as Show and Tell. So overall, I think this deck will be busted. I really have high hopes for this deck, and it will be one of the first that I will show in this channel, so very excited for it. And at the top 2, of course, the flares. I didn't want to choose a specific flare because I think all of them are pretty good, but I think overall they will be very, very impactful. Almost any kind of free spell is extremely impactful, as you will see also in the first position, a bit of a spoiler here. But I think the flares don't have a clear home yet for the most part, but I think they will be really, really impactful and will change the metagame a lot. So in terms of the flares, I think the best one is probably the blue one. I think this is the obvious choice, but a free counterspell is always insane. The thing that I like it is that it doesn't have a home right now. I think the most obvious home is Merfolk, but I think Merfolk is still not viable without Vial. So I think the next best shell will probably be Dredge, which I've been theory crafting a lot with Flare of Denial because I love free counter spells. And I've got a few builds, which I will show over the next few weeks, and I think all of them are pretty interesting. But for the most part, I think Flare of Denial will be very good with things like Narcomoeba, Prized Amalgam, and creatures that can be sacrificed for value or just come back very easily. Besides Dredge, I've also created a very weird and experimental brew with Sneaky Snacker, which is a creature that comes back from the graveyard if you draw 3 cards. Coincidentally, in Timeless, it's very easy to draw 3 cards with Brainstorm. So I think a build with Sneaky Snacker and other value creatures such as Fajali Archaeologist could also be very, very good. As for the rest of the flares, I think Flare of Malice is probably the second best one because it slides right into the Rakdos Breach decks and almost any deck that wants to sacrifice creatures such as Stitcher Supplier. It also fits into the Dredge build that I talked about before. It also fits into builds probably with Bowmasters. It's a really versatile card. It's really, really good. And as for the rest of the flares, I think the third best one is the Flare of Cultivation. It may be actually the best one, but I'm not really sure because I don't think the deck that usually plays it, which would be Titanfield, actually will be that good in the new metagame from Modern Horizons 3. But obviously that deck will play 4 copies with Arboreal Grazer and the Kami. And maybe other decks such as maybe some Natural Order decks which want to ramp very fast to Natural Order and then get the Atraxa. I think will be a very good card too. The 2 remaining are a bit of a puzzle. I think the white is the weakest one, but it's still a very good sideboard card for aggressive, probably White Winnie or Boros decks. I think it will be like really good to just catch the opponent by surprise. And for me, the most puzzling one and probably the most interesting one is actually Flare of Duplication, because I think people are really undervaluing this card, and I think it needs a really, really good shell. And the shell that I've been thinking of is actually a Phoenix shell, one with 4 Flare of Duplication and then the Temporal Trespass, which is coming with Assassin's Creed expansion, the one that gives you an extra turn. In Timeless, you could just have 3 mana and then sacrifice a Phoenix and copy the extra turn, and then you have 2 extra turns and you probably just win. So I think it's also a very good card in the right shell. And at number 1, the best cards coming from Modern Horizons 3 to Timeless are the Elementals. The main reason that the Elementals are so broken is because of the scam mechanic. Scam is essentially the slang for the trying to evoke an elemental and then you just use revival spells such as Not Dead After All or Feign Death. So then you're essentially for 1 mana you get 2 triggers of the elemental and it comes back with a +1/+1 counter. So it's just busted. There's a reason Fury got banned in Modern, and is that turn 1 4/4 Double Striker is very, very powerful, and you just can, in later turns, you can just wipe the whole board. So essentially it renders most aggro decks just not viable. I don't think Elves will be good even with all the additions. I don't think even Merfolk will be good even with Flare of Denials, because if they just let a Fury get scammed, they just instantly lose. And it gets even worse, because the most famous elemental to scam is obviously Grief, which allows you to Thought Seize your opponent 2 times, and then you have a really good body which is difficult to block. And you can do this on turn 1, so it's very, very disruptive. It's like really, really broken. I think Timeless is ready for scam, but it won't be fun, at least for the opponent. I intend to play a lot of scam, to be honest, in many colors, at least in the beginning. Besides Fury and Grief, the other elementals are also really, really good. I think the third best one right now is probably Subtlety. I think Subtlety is It gives you a really good tempo boost. It's not as good to scam, but I think it's still excellent in almost any blue-based tempo deck. Solitude is more for control decks, but I think it will still be excellent in probably a Stoneforge Mystic Shell, which with also probably Satoru the Infiltrator, which incidentally I think will be a very, very, very big player in the new format. I think Satoru the Infiltrator will actually be the best new card, which is not new, but it will become the best card after Modern Horizon 3 because it allows you to draw so many cards with the elementals, and when you scam them and when you evoke them, I think it will be insane. So Solitude with Stoneforge, Satoru, and some maybe Subtlety too, and Grief, I think an Esper build will be very, very good. I think the weakest elemental is probably Endurance, but I still think that since the graveyard will be so important after MH3 with Reanimate, with Dredge, with all the evoke elementals, I think Endurance may actually become main deckable because it's a free and instant way to just host the opposing graveyard. So ironically, I think the weakest elemental may become a centerpiece of the new format just because of this. We finally got to the end of the top 10. I really hope you liked it. I'm very excited to try all these cards and try to brew a ton of the decks. My favorite part of Magic is brewing, so expect a lot of gameplay and new brews in this channel. And if you enjoy the content, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. There are many more interesting videos coming, so I think you'll really enjoy those. See you the next time.